Hi, this is Paul Hoppy, aka Giant Buddha. Welcome back to Hand of the Week. This is week 6, it's September 27th, and I've expanded my Zen Madman challenge. I've added a little more madness to my Zen. So let's take a look at that. Here, these were my goals. I originally had 20 poker videos in there. I've decided to do 100 poker videos over 100 days. It'll actually be more than that because I've got some extra full-length videos in there for Drag the Bar. But what I'm doing is I'm recording one video every single day from either a hand that I played that day or some live table play, and sometimes maybe just some general philosophical thoughts on the game and maybe life. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. It's 100 videos, so there will be some variety in there. Anyway, I'm still going to be releasing these weekly free videos. Those 100 videos will be on Drag the Bar, but every week there will be one free video here. So what I'm going to do is take the most interesting hand that was under 10 minutes so that it fits nicely on YouTube and post that as a hand of the week. So it'll be about, one out of every 7 videos will be free. And if I happen to not do any hand review videos that week, I just do live play or PowerPoint kind of philosophical stuff, then I'll just come up with an extra hand review video for you guys here. So I was playing about 6 or 7 tables last night, and this hand, which I rather enjoyed, I feel dispels the notion that you can't play a lot of tables and still pay attention to your opponents and make really non-standard plays. So I've got King Jack suited in the small blind. It folds to unguarded in the cutoff, who's going to have a pretty wide range here. I'm not necessarily going to call up all of his stats here, but point being, I'd say he's got somewhere between 30 and 40%, probably in the 35 range. The big blind looks a little tighter, so that might open up his range. But anyway, I'm going to make a completely standard 3-bet with my King Jack. I've got good equity against his range. I'd say I'm probably a favorite. If I'm not more than a dog of a couple points, but I'm probably a favorite. So I'm very happy to 3-bet, try to get heads up, and he calls. Even if I don't get heads up, this plays pretty well. I'm of course going to c-bet with my second nut flush draw and 2 overcards, and I'm pretty much just always betting in this spot anyway. He calls, which could represent a wide range. He could be peeling with almost anything here. He doesn't tend to make really bad peels, so a hand like Ace 4 offsuit or King 4 of clubs or something, if those are in his range, he might lay down here. Although the Ace, I'm not so sure. So anyway, he's got a wide range here when he calls. Turns an Ace of spades, which puts more draws on the board. It gives me a gut shot. It kills my overcards in terms of, if he's hit the Ace, then I've got fewer outs. But if he doesn't hit the Ace, I might even be able to get him to fold either some small pairs or certainly get him to give up with hands that I'm ahead of, but I'd still rather just put the bet in myself, see if I can get him to fold. He doesn't, he calls, and the river's a 4, which is really a complete blank. 7-8 should not be a large part of my range. I could occasionally have a 7-8 suited here, and he could have the same, but I would expect him to usually raise the flop or the turn with that hand. He might wait just because there's so many draws out there on the turn, but in other words, the 4 is pretty much a blank. Even pocket 4s, I'm not so sure he has here, but if he does, c'est la vie, that's 3 combos. So anyway, I'm looking at this 4 on the river and thinking, well, really, what can I get him to fold? If I bet, I'm trying to get King Queen to fold, or to get him to make some sort of a leveling play with a pair. Now, I do think that unguarded here will sometimes fold a pair on the river, taking a call fold line as sort of a leveling play, knowing that I'm not going to barrel when I know he's calling down, and I think that's a good play. However, I think he uses it judiciously, and on this board there are so many draws, and none of the really likely draws came in. I mean, the 4 was the least draw completing card as far as something that would complete anything. So when everything whiffs, he's going to be very unlikely to make a play like that, because I think in this spot a play like that would be pretty bad. I could be barreling with spades, I could be barreling with hearts, I could be barreling with King Queen, King Jack, Queen Jack, 9-8. Probably can't have 9-7 here, but that's a lot of hands. So folding a pair in his spot is something I wouldn't do, and I wouldn't expect him to do. So I can't really get anything to fold as a bluff. But what I can do is I can check and let him bet, and I can consider a call here, getting 7.5 to 1. It may seem odd with the ace on board and I just have king high, but I don't expect him to have an ace that often. I think he could, it's possible. But getting 6.5 to 1, I think it's pretty close to calling. There aren't going to be a lot of semi-bluffs in his range, but at the same time, there are no really strong value hands. So since there aren't any really strong value hands, and there are a lot of hands that I beat already, those hands that I beat already are subsidizing me to make a check raise bluff. Because if I can already call or already sort of call, and then I can put this. So in other words, okay, since I can already kind of call, it's at least close, that $20 going into the pot really has to be considered part of the pot when I'm considering whether to bluff or call, right? Because I don't really want to fold. I could fold, but it's close. So when I look at my price to get those extra hands to fold, I've got the 20 in plus his 20 plus 130. So that's what, 6, 7, 8.5 bets about, right? Less rake. So I'm getting 8.5 to 1, which means I only need him to fold a little over 10% of the time, or rather, I only need 10% of his range to be hands that beat me, that fold. Could he wait to raise the turn with a hand like Jack 10, 10, 9, and then decide to put the value bet in, or decide not to raise the turn because it's an ace, and then decide to put the value bet in on the river? Yes. Could he fold that to a check raise? Absolutely. People just don't check raise the river as a bluff with the initiative nearly often enough at all. I mean, nowhere near often enough for him to be able to make a profitable call here with 10-9. And that's really what I'm relying on. The fact that if he did call down here, it would be a mistake. Because I can show up here with a hand like ace-king, ace-queen, even ace-jack, maybe even some weaker aces that I've just decided, he's going to bet for value, and he's also going to bet his bluffs, anything that's whiffed, which, it wouldn't be a stone cold bluff because he wouldn't just float twice and then bluff with air, but he certainly can have some draws that he just decided not to take a stab with. And then when I check to him on this river, there's a reasonable chance that he'll just take a stab at it because he's getting 6.5 to 1, and I can certainly have some air, some hands like king queen, king jack, queen jack, that there's a good chance that I'll fold. So when I check raise here, I'm obviously going to get him to fold the hands weaker than mine, which doesn't argue for a bluff, but it subsidizes the bluff because it basically lets me put in that first $20 pretty good, and then the next $20 I really think is a gimme, knowing my opponent, knowing that he's good enough to value bet really thin here. He might be able to bet 7s, 8s, or 9s for value, maybe even a 6, probably not a 6 because there's not much he can get called by, but he can make some good thin value bets. At the same time, he's good enough to fold those to a check raise, and while it might be like, well, he's good enough but he's folding the best hand, the point is he should fold that best hand. Calling with it is pretty bad here usually, because I'm just not going to show up with a bluff often enough. I'm going to have ace king, ace queen, ace jack the majority of the time. So it really makes sense for him to play his hand this way, and he does go ahead and fold, and you can say, yeah, I probably had the best hand. Well, I'd say about half the time that he folds I have the best hand, and the other half he probably has some sort of marginal made hand. Actually, I'd say it's maybe reasonable to assume that he has a marginal made hand that he bet folds more often than he has some sort of bluff that he bet folds here. So anyway, I thought this hand was pretty fun, and I hope you enjoyed it and maybe learned something from it or got some thoughts about how to play hands based on your opponent and not just kind of autopilot. Even when you're playing a lot of tables, I've played 6,000 hands with this guy, so we've got some history, and when you get some history with players, you can make those plays without necessarily having to sit there and look at, what are his stats, let's see, you just kind of know what someone's tendencies are, and that feel develops over time. Alright, so that's it for today, and I'll see you guys in the forums.